Hello guys, I'm Super Ron. Welcome back to the channel, and we're back at Autoshack, but with something very different this week. We are going Japanese with this Subaru Impreza STI. So as you can see, this is looking very sorry for itself. And as you've probably guessed, it hasn't actually got an engine in anymore. This is a customer, we've had him before. We did his Starlet GT Turbo, I did a head gasket and lots of other jobs on that. And after he sold that, he bought this Subaru Impreza. It's a 2008 STI 330S. So it's got the EJ25 2.5 litre turbo, but he didn't have much luck with this either. He had some engine problems, thought it was a head gasket, turned out to be a cracked block. So the engine had to come out, had to be fully refreshed. And it's had a few different people working on it, so I'm not quite sure how this is going to go back together, or if all the parts are here, which I'll show you in a minute. But it's going to be quite fun and exciting to do something different. Haven't done a boxer engine before, so everything in the bay is completely different to the regular engines and conversions you see here. So let's have a little look. And here is the new heart. So this is a fully rebuilt 2.5 litre boxer engine. You can see the EJ25, very strange looking engine. This is on its end at the moment. So that's the bell housing at the bottom. There's the cam belt and everything this end. And this is the bottom, that's the sump, oil filter. That's the main crank pulley. So all the inlet goes on here. So you've got a head this end with 2 cylinders, head this end with 2 cylinders, 2 spark plugs on the ends, and then the exhaust manifold comes out and goes up to the turbo. So everything is in very strange places on these. So it's going to get a lot of research to work out what goes where. So under the bonnet is empty. And as you can see, it has been empty for quite some time. It's got lots of bits of wildlife growing in here. Lots and lots of cobwebs. Got some brambles trying to make their way up through the bumper. But the gearbox is in. Just about seeing exhaust down there. It's like heater matrix pipes. I take it the engine comes out with a nice big connector, so that'll be good to go back in. I think they must have took the bonnet off to get it out because the gas struts are both disconnected. But it does look like there's quite a lot of room in here because it's only a little boxer engine, and they do sit very far forward in the bay on these Subarus. Power steering pump is tucked and all intact in there as well. So it looks like most things around the edge are all intact and just need piping in. But the bit I'm most worried about is all the bits in the back. Apparently everything is here, but as we don't frequent Subarus here, it's not like I can just look at one bit and think, that's that bracket, that's that bracket, that's that bracket. So we're gonna have to empty all the back out and see what we've got and try and make out if we have got all the parts. Because as you can see, the back is loaded with bits. So there it is, the STI 330, and this is the bit that worries me. Buckets full of nuts and bolts. Oh, there's an inlet manifold, airbox, battery, so yeah, intercooler back there, alternator, aircon. Some bits look regular, they're just in really odd places on Subarus. Bucket of bolts. There's the clutch and flywheel. So we've got to try and make out what bits go where. There's the radiator. And the other thing, we need to give it a hygiene clean as well. When I towed it in, looked down into the footwell, and what did I find? Half a kitchen and about 6 million Red Bulls and about 10 packets of fags. We've got some half-eaten vanilla custard crown multi-pack. I don't think I'll chance them. We've still got some bite marks out of the chocolate and a lot of Red Bulls everywhere. I reckon it must have taken about 30 seconds to get this engine bay out. Some more food. No, I don't think I'll chance them either. More Red Bulls, more Red Bulls, more Red Bulls. More Red Bulls, and under here, more Red Bulls, more Red Bulls, more Red Bulls. So first thing I'm going to do, we're going to clear out the car and see what we actually have got. Oh, and as usual, I was so distracted by the cakes, I missed that it's got a brand new clutch here in the front as well. Good sign. Oh, a couple of random spark plugs. Right, let's try and get some organisation into this. It's like a never-ending pit. So we got 35 Red Bull cans and a whole loads of empty packets of fags. I've just noticed on the best before end date is 19th of the 6th, 2020. So that must have been when it broke down, when he got the fresh cakes in, went out for a blast, broke down. So it means it has been off the road now for 3 years. But with that amount of Red Bull inside, I think he's probably still awake now. Let's move on to the car parts. Alright, there is our pile of bits, and on the good side it looks like there's not really that much. It's quite modular. So we've got our clutch and flywheel there with the starter motor, we've got the alternator, aircon pump, battery, then got our turbo heat shield, downpipe and cat. I think this is one of the up pipes to the turbo because it's a top mount turbo and the manifolds are at the bottom. Speaking of manifolds though, we haven't got any exhaust manifolds. They run on the bottom of the engine, around the sump, and then come up to the turbo at the top. We've got our up pipe and our down pipe, but no exhaust manifolds, which is a little bit worrying. But here we've got our inlet manifold. We've got one set of injectors already still on there. Found the other set of injectors. Got our intercooler and all our coil packs, knock sensors, and some other miscellaneous nuts and bolts. Lots of brackets in there. Hopefully they'll make sense when it gets together. There's the oil return and everything for the turbo and all the gaskets. Here we have our water. So we've got our radiator, got our head link pipes, radiator hoses. I think these probably air and water. Got our secondary air injection pump, aircon pipes. Got our air box, air funnel, grill. Some other bits and pieces. So the big bit that is missing is the exhaust manifolds. They're not still in the car, I don't think. Nope. Just a downpipe right down there. All right. So I think we'll start putting bits together and it should make a lot more sense. So before I start guessing everything, I'm going to get the research, I'm going to get the manuals out and see the diagrams, where everything goes, where it should go, so we get all this done the first time nicely. If this was just a Golf with a 20 valve turbo engine, we've got a new engine, all the ancillaries, just be on and in a day, no problem. We could pick up a bit and say, yep, that goes there, yep, that goes there, no problem at all. A lot of this doesn't really make sense at the moment because I want to get this together as efficiently as possible and then get it all back in the car. I'm looking forward to taking this one for a drive. 325 horsepower, four-wheel drive. I don't think I've ever been in an Impreza before, so I'm looking forward to restoring this one to its former glory. So let's clock into Subaru school and start doing some research. Okay, so this is a little bit better. I've just been going through all the buckets of nuts and bolts, getting them lined up to matching their friends. So then we know how many of each type we've got, the selection of different sizes and lengths. If there's ones that have got matching heads, like these three have got different heads, so obviously something needs a 3-bolt, that's where they'll go. All these ones are to do with the exhaust. There's turbo gasket, downpipe, all these are exhaust. These look very exhausty. Downpipe, another gasket. They're the caps for the aircon pipes. Pretty sure these are the bell housing bolt. These secondary air injection solenoids are making more sense now. So they go on there. There must be one each side. And we found all the gaskets that fit on there. Same with these, so that all makes sense now. Flip the engine over so it's the correct way up and correct orientation. So now you can see it makes a little bit more sense how it is. Got the crank pulley at the front, got 2 pistons going that way, 2 pistons going that way, and it is a very low flat engine. Spark plugs on the ends. Here is the bell housing, ready for our new clutch to go on. I've found also all the cam solenoids and cam sensors, but when you go to look on the engine, they're actually already fitted. So it's had all new cam sensors and cam solenoids replaced. We've also got 5 coil packs, with this being the new one. The only problem is, I don't know which was the faulty one. This one looks the worst, so I'm probably going to replace it with that. So we've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. And we're just going to have to try it. Now it's the right way up. Lots of things are making sense. Crank sensor, oil pressure. So this is now the top of the engine. We've got this waterway. It's got a hole each side that links the two halves of the block together. Goes on there. So this one comes forward to the radiator. And you've got your heater matrix. So they're all making sense now. So I watched some videos on people taking these out and it looks like they do put them in bare. So I'll get the clutch and flywheel on. Then I think we can drop it in the hole. It's got all its mounts on the bottom already. So it should just drop on the subframe. And I think that's the return and the feed for the oil for the turbo. So maybe they'll make a bit more sense once we get it together. And some water pipes as well. It's all starting to make sense. Tidiness is definitely the key. So my first box is getting emptier already. Got the coil packs in. I did have some spare cam sensors and cam solenoids. Or so I thought, because we have these ones already bolted in the bottom. But as it turns out, we have ones on the top as well. So we've got them ones and the sensor in, crank sensors in, and the other solenoid on this side, and the other sensor. And because we've already got the bottom ones in, I was able to copy the bolts for that and that off the bottom. So we know we've got the right ones there. Next up, I'm going to put the water pipe on. So just uncovered these. We've got all new gaskets. So we've got O-ring and O-ring. Cleaned up the faces. So we can get this sat on and get that bolted in place and keep on going. And found the bolts for that as well. Right length and a good telltale. Don't know if you can see, but the thread is all clumped up with old rust to there, and then where it goes into the block, we're all clean thread. So we know these are the correct ones for here as well. So we'll get this bolted on. So let's clean the flywheel up ready. As you can see, the old clutch, it's definitely seen some life, so that's why he's got a new upgraded one. So let's get flywheel on next, clutch on, and I think maybe try and get it in. And looking in my pile of bits, there are actually 9 bolts for the clutch, which is an odd number, and we just happen to have 9 of this type. So they look perfect, they fit in, so that is going to be our clutch. And you can see the difference between the new and the old one. This one is pretty smooth. So I've cleaned that up, let's get it together. And verified with a super rotten. It's official. The release bearing looks very similar setup to the Porsches we do. I'm not sure whether it's a boxer thing or not, but the release arm in there to move it, you actually leave that out loose, and then when the clutch is in, you slot that in and have a big shaft that goes through the hole, go through, and then locate all the way in, which is just how that 964 Porsche was as well. So we'll rattle that out, leave this loose. I've just greased up all the splines because they're looking a bit mucky. Hopefully we can just slot it in. Get the bell housing bolts ready. And I think I am ready. I was just counting up my bell housing bolts and I was a couple short, but Google had the answer and says the bottom 2 should be studs. So there are some of the studs that are in the pile. The other thing I noticed while we're at the back here is these ports here and here match our gaskets for these pipes. So there's the port there and there's the one there. So these must go, I'm sure it will become apparent when it gets in the car, but at least now I've seen them because I probably wouldn't have spotted them once it's in the car. And we're up. Bit of an awkward thing to lift because it hasn't actually got any lifting eyes, but I found some of the bigger bolt holes there and there. We're sitting nice and even. So let's see if we can get it in with the bonnet still on. And we're in. That dropped in nicely on the mounts. It's really handy having those studs on the bell housing. That just allowed it to slot in. The only thing I did have to do was disconnect the rams, and that allowed us to get the bonnet high enough so the bonnet could stay on. But we are in. As you can see, it's such a short engine, but it's dropped straight into its mounts on the subframe. So now I just need to locate the fork for the clutch at the back, put the starter in, start building bits up. So just got to locate the fork in, slot it into the release bearing there, check, that's down, and then get the pin, grease that up, and then we can slot it and jiggle it in. So even though we haven't got a working engine yet, we should have a fully functioning clutch pedal. Feels good. And here it is underneath. Still got a little bit of wildlife under here as well. There's the engine mounts that dropped in. They went straight in their mounts. We can get a nut on there. Same on that side. There's the exhaust ports. So you've got two this side and two this side. And they link together, then go up to the turbo up there. And that's the pipe we're missing at the moment. So we've got an earth strap. Go there. All under here, it's fitting in there nicely. Got another earth strap to there. It's like it's had a patch welded on the sump before, or it's just had a reinforcement plate put on there. Now we can see the underneath. So we've got another drain of some sort there to go in. Just looking for a starter motor bolt because we seem to be one short. I didn't find any, but I have found another 2 Red Bull. That makes 37. We just seem to be missing a starter motor bolt at the moment, so I can't put that on. So now I've got to do a little bit more research in what goes above the inlet and what goes below the inlet out of all these pipes. Because the last thing I want to do is get the inlet all bolted on and then find out some of these pipes need to go below it and have to take it off again. So knowledge is power. We'll get some research done and see how this jigsaw goes together. A few more bits on. Things are starting to make sense now with where the pipes are going, where the breathers are going. They line up with link pipes like that on the intercooler, which don't make sense until it's actually put on to them. Just got all the inlet back together. Some of the loom was unbolted and the fuel rails were unbolted underneath, so that's all back on. And we spoke to the customer about the exhaust manifolds, and he said they might be at the engine builder, they might be where it got taken out, but he doesn't really know. So we got on eBay, ordered these yesterday, and these have just turned up today. So good excuse for some upgrades. So that's what I'm going to put on next. Got that. The new up pipe, new gaskets, so we'll get this on underneath. And now we have somewhere for our turbo to sit. So that sits in that corner there. We've still got those secondary air injection pipes to go on the back there by the turbo and this side, so I think I'll try and wiggle them in next. So let's do that. And lots more of the jigsaw back together. Got all the SIA valves in. Turns out they go here and here. Managed to find out which brackets go where, then found out where the mounting points are. Then it all started to make sense. The more you get on, the pipes started to all line up, and that all runs around to here. All the hard pipes along the back all started to line up, and the other side one comes all the way along here and disappears down the back. Got the brackets for the turbo on. The more you put on, the more makes sense. So these all mount the turbo. I think I've pretty much got all the breathers on now, all the air pipes, everything that needs to come around. So next up will be turbo, and I've got all the inlet manifold ready. That can go on. And all the big bits can start to go on. And I've been back underneath, getting more bits on. Got the up pipe on. Had to have a little bit of modification because it was hitting the head just up there. So with a slight persuasion with the hammer, that's back on. Now that all clears. That does look pretty cool under there. I did say earlier I thought that was a drain for something, but that is in fact the dipstick going into the sump. So another thing that now makes sense. Oil filter tucked all up in there. This exhaust manifold looks pretty cool. Let's get some more bits bolted on. Something I couldn't find was the rubber hose that goes on the oil return for the turbo, but I just looked in our stash and found some 16mm Samco Sport. So get that on, the turbo can then go on the car. Turbo is in, that sits nice and snug in there, the little snail. More and more bits are making sense. This little union that was up here is for the turbo oil feed. There's also a water pipe that comes out the back of the block, and that goes to the water feed for the turbo. The water return comes back up to the header tank. So I'll just get them connected up, and then we can put this inlet on. And it's really gonna start to take shape. All right, turbo is on, everything is connected up. So I think we're all set. Any Subaru experts that see I've forgotten something, let me know, but I'm sure I'm about to find out in a minute. Inlet's all ready and together. Everything's plugged in. We've just got the plugs on the end for the cam sensors and the coil packs. They'll go down the sides. I think apart from that, we're all ready to go. So let's see. And we're in. What a success. Everything plugged in nicely. Everything fed through. Everything found its home. So now let's get all the ancillaries along the front. It'll start looking like a full engine again. It's pretty cool. You can see that new manifold around the front. Hopefully, even with the radiator in, you'll still be able to see that. Bit of coolness. So let's get all these pulleys on. Now we're getting somewhere. Got all the ancillaries on the front, power steering, alternator, aircon and air pump. It's all ready for the belts to go on. Got all the heat shields and brackets at the back now. It's got extra brackets that go around here to hold the intercooler. Got all the ones the other side. And everything is finding its place. Every time you put on a new bit, it lines up with a space to connect it up. Got the boost control valve in there. All the plugs are lining up in the right places. So I think we are well on track. Got all the brackets, got all the alternator loom, aircon pipes are all in, fuel lines are in. So now I think we can put the intercooler on. So the intercooler goes on the top with the Scooby Scoop, and it is a super short route for the boost. Comes straight out of the turbo, into the intercooler, and then into the throttle body. Got the blow off valve here. Everything's connected underneath. We've got the starter motor, clutches all in and working as we saw. Turbo's all in, heat shields are all on. I think we are ready to make this a proper Subaru bay and put that intercooler in the middle. So you just saw I was filling that with oil and I had to stop because I heard some noise, looked underneath and there's a big puddle on the floor. I thought the sump nut had not been put in, but it is in fact coming out of the spark plug hole here. So I'm not quite sure what is going on, but it's coming out by the coil pack there. So you fill the oil up here and that goes into the top of the rocket cover, but it is ending up coming straight out and onto the floor. So there's the spark plug hole. We just took the coil pack out, put some oil in. That should not be coming out of there. And dripping down onto the floor. So I've just started taking the other coil pack out, and as you can see, it's right up against the chassis leg there. So I can't even work out how to pull that one out at the minute. But what it looks like, they've forgotten to put the seals in that go around the spark plug holes of the rocker cover. There's the outer, then the inner. On the other side, it's just as tight. I've got one spark plug out, the front one, got the coil pack off. But the rear one can't even get past the chassis leg at the minute. So I'm going to have to take these rocker covers off to see if there's a seal in there. But at the minute, it's going to be a fingertip job. Not too simple. Oh, Subaru. Obviously, if we'd have known, we would have done it outside the car because there wouldn't have been a chassis leg then. And that would have been a lot easier when it was on the pallet. So let's try and get this cover off. Alright, let's see if this will squeeze out. Yeah, and exactly what we thought. And these in the leftover gasket box fit perfectly in there. Amazing. Maybe that'll seal a little bit better now. It's actually got a gasket in it. So get this side back on, other side off, more difficult, and then we'll be ready to go. And the other side all off. And no gaskets. 1, 2. Put this one back on. All back together. Let's see if the oil will stay inside the engine this time. Looking good. Okay, that's the rocker covers all back on with their gaskets, and now we're more complete than we've ever been so far. I've got the airbox in, the battery in. All that's left to fit is there's a few cosmetic trims and the air scoop, but I'll leave them off until we know we're up and running. So this is the first time that we can actually put power to the car. Now everything's all in. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to run a code scan on it, and that'll just tell me if everything is plugged in or not. Because we're missing the exhaust manifolds, we were also missing the lambda sensor, so we've got one of them on the way from Subaru. That should be here in the morning. But apart from that, we should be code free. So let's plug that in now and see what we've got. All right, first time powering up. Let's see what we have. That's a good sign. 57,000 miles. Right, let's see what the scanner says. Engine codes. No codes present. We were a bit worried because it's been sitting for so long about it having old fuel in it. But if you look at the fuel gauge there, that is below empty. So it's either completely been run out or it's all evaporated. So we can put some nice fresh fuel in and then we'll be ready for a start. But first, I just want to build up some oil pressure. So I'm going to disconnect the crank sensor so we can turn it over without it trying to start. So disconnect that and then we can build it up till the oil pressure light goes out. And the oil pressure light went out, so that is a good sign. It means oil's getting all around the engine and we are up to full operating oil pressure, and we've got none on the floor, which is a bonus over last time. So I can plug the crank sensor back in now and I think we are ready for a full start. And I've just picked up 20 litres of V-Power, so let's get that in and get this pumping round. There, quarter of a tank of fuel now. We'll give it one last spin over without the crank sensor in to make sure we got all the oil pressure. Yep, oil lights out. Plug the crank sensor back in. Right, I think it's time to try it. Not a good start. Something's not right. I think I'm going to check if we've got any fuel getting through. There's two fuel lines here. This bit was together. Just want to make sure these are the right way around. That's the thing with taking over someone else's strip down. If I was doing that, I'd mark top one, and top one, so I knew that that fuel line goes to that one, goes to that one. Whereas at the moment, we're not sure. It makes sense. This one goes on the top, that fuel line's on the top, but you never know. Let's check if we've got fuel getting to the front. See if we've got fuel. Yeah, got plenty of fuel. Well, we're getting something because we've got smoke coming out the exhausts. So we're getting some kind of combustion, but no fire. Well, the mystery continues. I've still been diving in, diagnosing what the problems are. We've verified our fuel system is all fine. The feed is in the right place. We were getting fuel out the back because I could smell it. So we went to look at spark. So I put a coil pack and a plug in and plugged all that in, earthed it out, and we're not getting spark. So that is why it is not running. For some reason, we're not getting spark. So we checked all our connections. I've checked all the power and earths at all 4 coil plugs, and they're all there, no problem. Luckily, as the radiator hadn't been filled up yet, I could just pull that out, and as you can see at the front, I've popped off the covers because I just want to verify the cam timing, just as one more thing to tick off, just in case one was a tooth out or something and it's freaking out the cam sensors. But as you can see there, they are spot on. All 4 marks line up perfectly. So cam timing is perfect. We've verified all the other sensors around the engine. The drive-by-wire throttle pedal is working, and we've verified that's moving. We know the injectors are pulsing because it smells out the exhaust and the spark plugs are wet, but we're not getting a spark. I've confirmed everything is plugged in, everything is where it should be. So I'm kind of at a stuck point where to look next. The only thing I am going to check is if each coil wire, because they have a power and earth and a signal from the ECU, just to verify that a signal wire is connected to the ECU fine and there's not a break, but they're all 4 individual wires going back. So the chances of the 4 of them all being broken together is quite slim. But I just want to tick everything off. I've even wondered whether it's a Subaru alarm and immobiliser, so I've had the bonnet pin down, locked all the car, made sure it's fully armed, unlocked, opened the door, went through the full cycle, and the alarm and immobiliser light is all saying it's happy on dash. I think we're going to have to dig out the ECU, verify the wiring back, and just check the ECU to see if there's any problems in there. What a mystery. But good news, with all this turning over, we have no more oil leaks. All the oil now stays in the engine. So I'll take these little wins when we can get them. Well, I found the ECU. It lives down in the footwell of death here. So lucky I did clear all that out earlier. And here is the ECU. I've just rung the plug all the way from here, all the way to each coil pack, and it pings out fine. So all the wires in the loom are fine. So I'm really running out of ideas. The only thing I can think possibly is a problem with the ECU. I noticed on here this has got STI 330S, 2nd of the 4th 09, even though this is an 08 car. I'm not sure if it had some ECU upgrades when it was new or in the first year. But this is all the cage that it sits in, and it sits right up there on the firewall under the carpet. So I know the wired loom is all correct, so it's the ECU that's not telling it to spark for some reason. Maybe I'll just see if we can pop this open, see if there's anything obvious. If not, we might have to get this sent away. But as it turns out, it doesn't take a lot to get the ECU out. This just pops open, and then you have the ECU. I've just given it a good look over, and I can't see any signs of any burnt tracks or any problems. Sometimes on all these little contacts, if there is a problem with a driver, you can see a little burnt patch or discoloured in the green. On this one, it all looks fine. So I can't see anything obvious on it. Maybe we will have to get it tested, because this is the last thing that I can think of. Just being dead for so long and then having power to put to it, there might have been something not quite happy. We'll have to wait and see. That slides in, and that pops closed. even leaving the Subaru seal all intact. Well, we had a development. We called the engine builder and said, look, there's something not quite right. Can you come down and have a look, just check it over and see if anything's out of time or anything like that. So he came down, stripped the cam belt off. Everything was perfectly in time, just as we thought from earlier. And that was all fine. We were trying to search around, seeing why it wouldn't spark, what was going on. And then we noticed when we were turning over the crank, that on this trigger wheel, this is where the crank sensor picks up its signal to know when to fire. Here, we have a tooth missing. Keep on going round. Another tooth missing. Another tooth missing. So the crank sensor didn't know where the top dead center was. So it didn't know what to do. It has these flats on, so it can recognize points, whether it's for top dead center for number 1, whether it's for compression stroke. But when there's an extra tooth out, it was getting its signal earlier, and then I think it was just getting confused. So there is our problem. Missing teeth on the back here, causing the ECU not to know what it's doing. So this is a relief that everything else that I've done is all fine. So he's going to source one of these. There's no sign of it getting caught on anything or no sign of any parts being in the engine. So it must have been when the engine was stripped down, either this was put down somewhere or when it arrived and it was in a box of lots of other bits and maybe it bounced around. I don't know, but that is definitely the problem. I'm just glad we've actually found something because I've spent hours searching on this, searching every part, rechecking everything, making sure everything was correct that I've put together, which it all was. But I'm just glad we found the problem. So we'll get this timed up and then it should fire straight up. So the engine builders have been back. We've got a new pulley from Subaru. Everything's back together. Everything's timed up and it fired straight up. They put it all back together, got all the coolant and everything in and run up. But all it was that pulley. And now, fires straight up. So the annoying thing about situations like this is I spent another couple of days fault finding, trying to work out if I'd not connected something up or something wasn't in the right place or something wasn't plumbed in right. But as it turned out, everything I'd done was perfect. So that is the frustrating thing, but it's just one of those things. They've put it right and now it is fully up and running. So we're just going to run it completely up, get it up to temperature, then it'll be time for this to see the road again. Okay, we'll just give this a little test drive just to make sure everything's all right. Gets all the gears and everything. I've run it right up to temperature, so fans have kicked in and out, so I know we're all bled up nicely. Check with all the clutch, brakes, got all the gears. Brakes a bit rusty and they should clean up nicely. It's driving really smooth. Got no lights on the dash, which is good. So we'll just take it for a quick run around the block and it should be all good. Heaters are nice and hot, so that's all bled up. Turn that down. It is a brand new engine, so I'm not going to go fast. Just going to trundle around, make sure everything pressurizes up properly, make sure everything is fine, and then we'll get it cleaned up and back to the customer. And with that quick wash, we're all back together and finished. These are a cool looking car. You don't see many of these, especially the STI. This being the top one, the 330S. It's got the power to match these huge wide arches. I didn't realise how wide these cars were. They're the massive wide arches at the back, which go into the doors as well, so the rear doors are flared, which is kind of cool, like the RS4s. And at the front as well, they have a huge wide arch kit on these. With a little clean up, this now looks fantastic. I am a big fan of these. I'm not really a Subaru guy, but these do look a very cool hot hatch. Being Japanese, I don't reckon it weighs a lot, and it has got a substantial bit of power to go along with it. So I've just checked all the fluids, checked all the levels, and everything is fine. All the oil is now staying in the engine, which I am very happy to see. So what a cool car. So I think we can call this one done. It was quite a daunting task at the beginning when we were just presented with a boot full of parts. No experience with the boxer engine, so I was picking up pieces that I had no idea where they went. But with a little bit of research and a little bit of common sense, it's all gone together perfectly. The more you get together, the more things make sense because all the pipes line up, where everything bolts on, goes together nicely. And it is just a shame about that crank trigger wheel because otherwise I'd have got it all together, turned the key and fired it straight up. Like I said earlier, it's frustrating for me because I was going over all my work, double checking everything was plugged in, double checking all the earth points were on, the power points were on, checking all fuses throughout the car, checking the wiring. With me being the last person to work on the car, it must have been something I did. But it just goes to show, be confident, don't doubt yourself. If you work through it methodically, there's a pretty good chance you've done it right. So this one is now back on the road, first time since 2020. The owner's just got to do about 1,000 miles running it in, then we're going to do an oil and filter change, and then he can unleash this 325 horsepower through all four wheels. Hopefully I'll be here when we do the oil change and I can take it for a proper test drive then. The more I work on this, and especially now it's cleaned up, I do really like these cars. They are quite a small hot hatch, but with the really aggressive wide arches, they are almost as wide as they are long. So who knows? Maybe I'll have to add one of these to my list one day. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We're going to wrap this one up here because we're all done. It's all ready for its MOT, which I can't see it having any trouble going through. I hope you've enjoyed this little insight into the boxer engine and have enjoyed learning around with me as well. As you can see in the workshop, we've got plenty more to get on with. And of course, as I'm doing the jobs, I will be filming it and then getting them out to you guys. So make sure you subscribe to tune in next time because there's no telling what will be next, but I'm sure something has caught your eye. But until next time, make sure you have fun.